One summer moment can change a child's life. Through Toys for Tots Give and Go initiative, your support provides books, games, toys, and outdoor adventures that spark curiosity, creativity, and a love of nature. Whether it's fishing, learning a new sport, reading under a tree, or playing with friends, these moments build confidence and lifelong memories. For too many children, those moments never come. You can help change that this summer. Visit toysfortots.org. Toys for Tots, delivering hope beyond the holidays.
This is going to be an extremely busy month. I have to watch 104 soccer games, follow the pregame, the postgame, yell useless opinions at the TV. It's a lot. So I knew that when it comes to screening for colon cancer, the choice was clear. The Cologuard Plus test. It can be used at home and can only take 15 minutes, so I can do it during halftime and not miss any action. If you are 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about screening for colon cancer with the Cologuard test. You can also request a prescription at Cologuard.com.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
People love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
You are now entering the Stone Zone. Remember back in 1976 when America had an oil crisis and the response was President Jimmy Carter urging Americans to just wear a sweater if they were cold? Well, welcome to New York, where the newest frontier of progressive governance is your thermostat. As temperatures soared into the upper 90s and low 100s and the city's concrete canyons radiated like a blast furnace, Mayor Zoran Mandami offered New Yorkers what may become the single most unintentionally hilarious municipal guidance in modern memory. To ease pressure on the electrical grid, residents were encouraged to set their air conditioners to 78 degrees. That's almost 80 degrees, with City Hall promising that municipal buildings will do likewise. It presents an enlightened civic responsibility, they said. The public treated it as if it was an opening of a comedy act. What's the point of air conditioning if it's set at virtually 80 degrees? New Yorkers, of course, responded with precisely the level of decorum one would expect from a city that once booed Santa Claus, heckled mayors to their faces, and perfected sarcasm as both an art form and a survival mechanism. Within minutes, social media resembled a farm-alive fire of ridicule. The memes multiplied faster than rats on the Lexington Avenue subway. Every comedian in the 5 boroughs may suddenly find themselves unemployed because the mayor himself has begun writing the jokes. Perhaps the finest response came not from a political commentator, but from one ordinary citizen who posed the single most devastating question of the entire controversy. After hearing someone boast that all of her coworkers had proudly voted for Mandami, she demanded proof that every one of those same coworkers had faithfully set their own thermostats to the prescribed 78 degrees. There it was, one sentence, one glorious challenge. Produce the thermostat receipts. Send us a screenshot of your thermostat. Political virtue is wonderfully inexpensive until it requires personal discomfort. One strongly suspects that many of those proudly proclaiming solidarity with the people's thermostat commissar are sleeping beneath comforters in apartments cooled to a crisp 69 degrees, while publicly extolling the moral superiority of perspiration. It is one of the things to post a hashtag celebrating shared sacrifice. Is quite another to awaken at 3 o'clock in the morning, stuck to one's Egyptian caption sheets like a postage stamp. There's always existed a remarkable gap between progressive rhetoric and progressive air conditioning. One can imagine the conversations taking place across New York City tonight. Darling, we absolutely support reducing energy consumption. Splendid, but set our thermostat to 70. But the mayor said 78. The mayor doesn't live in this apartment. Case closed. There's also something deliciously ironic about asking ordinary New Yorkers to ration cool air while Times Square blazes with enough electronic illumination to signal the International Space Station. Towering office buildings remain brilliantly lit long after their occupants have gone home. Giant digital advertisements consume electricity with the enthusiasm of a casino in Las Vegas. Yet, we're told, salvation allegedly depends upon 95-year-old Mrs. Goldstein out in Brooklyn surrendering 8 precious degrees of comfort while attempting to survive a heat index approximately approaching triple digits. Forgive New Yorkers if they found the arithmetic less than persuasive. This episode reveals something far more profound than an argument over simply air conditioning. It exposes a governing philosophy increasingly convinced that virtually every private decision requires official guidance. Once, politicians confined themselves to balancing budgets, paving streets, reducing crime, and ensuring that the lights remained on. Today, however, they aspire to become nutritionists, transportation planners, environmental counselors, parenting consultants, appliance instructors, and now certified residential climate technicians. One half expects next month's directive to include mandatory limits on ice cubes, perhaps no more than 2 cubes per beverage, maybe sparkling water only on alternative Tuesdays, pizza ovens permitted to operate exclusively during off-peak electrical hours, window shades synchronized according to municipal sustainability guidelines. The satire here practically writes itself because reality has become determined to outperform comedy. To be fair, electric utilities have long recommended voluntary conservation during periods of extraordinary demand, but requests are hardly unprecedented. What transformed this particular suggestion into political fertilizer was not the engineering. It was the symbolism. Americans instinctively recoil whenever government appears more interested in supervising private conduct than solving public problems. They recognize, often before politicians do, the subtle difference between governing a city and managing its residents. New Yorkers, of all people, have earned the right to enjoy cold air. They pay some of the nation's highest taxes. They endure some of the nation's highest rents. They navigate construction, congestion pricing, delayed trains, potholes, scaffolding that survives longer than some marriages, and utility bills capable of inducing mild cardiac distress. The least city government can do is refrain from turning down every thermostat and into making an ideological statement. There's an old saying that the road to serfdom is paved with good intentions. It might now be updated for the modern metropolis. The road to political comedy is apparently cooled to exactly 78 degrees. Meanwhile, somewhere across the city, millions of New Yorkers quietly reach for their remote controls. They press the downward arrow once, then again, then perhaps a third time for good measure. Some acts of civil disobedience require marches. Others require nothing more than setting the thermostat to 70, pouring a nice cold glass of iced tea, sitting comfortably beneath a ceiling fan, and enjoying the latest episode of municipal absurdity from the cool comfort of one's own living room. If City Hall truly wishes to know how many New Yorkers embrace the people's thermostat, there's a simple solution. Don't ask for polling data, ask to see the thermostats. One suspects the truth is considerably cooler than the rhetoric. Thanks for joining us in the Stone Zone. Americans rightly celebrate July 4th as our nation's Independence Day, but it was 250 years ago today that history records another date that deserves equal reverence. Before Thomas Jefferson's immortal words were formally adopted, before the parchment declaration that would be engrossed and signed over the weeks that followed, there was July 2nd, 1776. It was on that extraordinary summer day in Philadelphia that the Continental Congress voted to sever forever the political bonds that had tied the American colonies to Great Britain. It was on July 2nd that independence became a legal and political reality. John Adams himself believed that July 2nd, not July 4th, would forever be celebrated by succeeding generations as America's great national holiday. In a prophetic letter to his beloved wife, Abigail, Adams envisioned parades, bonfires, illuminations, bells, music, and joyous celebration from one end of the continent to the other. The only thing he was wrong about was the date. To understand July 2nd is to appreciate the extraordinary courage gathered inside the Pennsylvania State House, now revered as Independence Hall. These were not reckless revolutionaries intoxicated by lofty ideals alone. They were merchants, physicians, lawyers, farmers, jurists, ministers, printers, planters, scholars, and businessmen, as well as blacksmiths. They were husbands, fathers, grandfathers who knew precisely what they risked. By voting for independence, they signed what was, in effect, their own death warrant, should the revolution fail, of course. Every man present understood that conviction for treason meant the hangman's noose. Their property would be confiscated, their families ruined, their names erased from respectable society. Yet one after another, they chose liberty over safety. On July 2nd, 1776, the chamber was filled with debate, prayer, anxiety, and determination. Richard Henry Lee's resolution declaring that these united colonies are and have a right ought to be free and independent states came before the Congress after weeks of discussion. 12 colonies voted in favor. New York, lacking final instructions from its legislature, abstained rather than impose independence. The resolution passed. At that moment, the United States of America was actually born. The remainder of the day was devoted to refining Jefferson's Declaration, which would explain to the world why independence had become both necessary and just. Delegates carefully edited language, deleted passages, strengthened arguments, and weighed every sentence with biblical seriousness. They understood they were writing not merely for their contemporaries, but for countless generations to come. John Adams emerged with the day's proceedings convinced that history had forever changed. Tireless throughout the debates, Adams had spent months persuading hesitant delegates that reconciliation with the Crown had become impossible. As darkness settled over Philadelphia, he composed the remarkable letter to his wife, predicting that that day would be celebrated forever with pomp and parade, bonfires and illuminations. His vision reflected not arrogance, but profound gratitude that Providence had permitted him to witness the birth of a new nation. Thomas Jefferson spent July 2nd watching his carefully crafted declaration undergo rigorous revision by the delegates. Congress struck several passages, softened others, removed an extended condemnation of the slave trade that Jefferson had included in his original draft, but some of the Southern delegates objected to. Though undoubtedly frustrated by many of these edits, Thomas Jefferson recognized that unanimity among the colonies mattered more than personal authorship. His masterpiece would ultimately survive with its central truths gloriously intact. Benjamin Franklin, then 70 years old and already among the most famous men in the world, lent both wisdom and calm to the proceedings. His wit frequently relieved moments of unbearable tension, yet no delegate better understood the gravity of the hour. Franklin had devoted decades of diplomacy, science, philosophy, and public service, and he had an eye for the ladies. Now he watched those lifelong labors culminate in the creation of an entirely new republic. Richard Henry Lee of Virginia, whose resolution had brought Congress to this defining vote, saw the principle he had championed become law. Although absent during portions of the day because of his family obligations, he carefully worded resolution that he put forward became the legal instrument that transformed 13 colonies into sovereign states. John Hancock presided over the Congress with quiet authority. As president of the Continental Congress, he supervised proceedings that would forever alter world history. Already one of Britain's most wanted men because of his defiance during the Boston Resistance, Hancock knew full well that independence meant there could never be any return to the old order. Samuel Adams, often called the father of the American Revolution, and by the way, he was never a brewer, had spent years preparing the colonies for precisely this moment. Through committees of correspondence, newspaper essays, speeches, and relentless political organization, Adams had helped awaken an American identity distinct from British rule. July 2nd represented the fulfillment of decades of sacrifice by Samuel Adams. Roger Sherman of Connecticut stood among the other few men who would eventually sign all four great founding documents of the young republic. Quiet, practical, deeply religious, and remarkably influential despite lacking formal education, Roger Sherman worked tirelessly to forge consensus among delegates whose personalities frequently clashed. You're listening to the Stone Zone, and I'm Roger Stone. When we come back, we'll continue the story of the path to July 4th. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
The Stone Zone. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The playoffs are here, and you can predict the action all the way to the finals with FanDuel Predicts. Predict the spread, the total points, and even the game-winning moments that make the playoffs. Sign up and get a $25 bonus with FanDuel Predicts.
Offered by FanDuel Prediction Markets, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant. 18-plus bonus is non-withdrawable and expires 7 days after receipt. Trading derivatives involves significant risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Manage your activity with their consumer protection tools. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/predicts/bonus-offer-terms.
I wrote a little song to remind you, Choice Hotels get you more of the experiences you value. The Cambria Hotel's got it all. A rooftop bar, have a ball. Bring a date, your squad, or even your mom. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
Welcome to a new era of baseball's great spectacle. The T-Mobile Home Run Derby, live on Netflix. The biggest sluggers in baseball put their talents to the test on All-Star Weekend. Raw power meets star power. Big swagger meets bigger slams. And you don't swing to make contact. You swing to make history. Watch the T-Mobile Home Run Derby live on Netflix, Monday, July 13th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
This is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone. We're talking about the extraordinary events of July 2nd, 1776, in the run-up to July 4th. And we've talked about the role of Jefferson, Adams, Franklin, and now it was Robert Livingston of New York who remained a member of the committee that drafted the Declaration of Independence, although New York's delegation still lacked the authority to vote affirmatively for independence. Like many delegates, Livingston balanced personal caution with an unmistakable recognition that history was moving inexorably towards complete separation with Great Britain. Was Charles Carroll of Carrollton, Maryland, the wealthiest man in Maryland, and the only Roman Catholic signer of the Declaration, supporting independence despite knowing that his immense fortune would make him a especially attractive target for the British confiscation. His faith, patriotism, and courage proved stronger than worldly security. George Wythe, the brilliant Virginian jurist and mentor to Thomas Jefferson, devoted himself to creating a constitutional republic governed by law rather than arbitrary power. His legal scholarship profoundly shaped the philosophical framework upon which the new nation would rest. Then there was Benjamin Rush, the distinguished Philadelphia physician who believed liberty and education were inseparable. As delegates debated independence only blocks from his medical practice, Rush viewed the revolution not merely as political separation, but as a moral awakening capable of elevating human dignity itself. Then, of course, there was Edward Rutledge, only 26 years old, the youngest delegate to sign the Declaration of Independence, who represented a generation prepared to inherit extraordinary responsibility. Although initially cautious, he ultimately joined the unanimous movement towards independence once South Carolina resolved its concerns. Several eventual signers were not physically present on July 2nd. Some were absent because of illness, family obligations, military duties, or delayed travel, while others, including delegates from New York, still awaited final authorization from their colonial legislatures before formally endorsing independence. Nevertheless, all would soon embrace the cause and ultimately affix their names to the Declaration binding themselves to the same perilous destiny. General George Washington remained with the Continental Army in New York, preparing for what he knew would be Britain's overwhelming military response. Washington did not participate in the congressional debates, yet every decision made in Philadelphia ultimately rested upon this soldier's ability to survive the campaigns that lay ahead. Without victory on the battlefield, the eloquence inside Independence Hall would become nothing more than evidence presented at treason trials. Now, it's fashionable in some academic circles to reduce the Founding Fathers to imperfect men whose personal shortcomings somehow diminish this incredible accomplishment. Such revisionism profoundly misunderstands both history and human nature. They were on the verge of creating the greatest nation God has ever known, the United States of America. And many thought it would be celebrated on July 2nd rather than July 4th, but today in the Stone Zone, we've told you exactly why. Don't go away, because we'll be back with more on the other side.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Starbucks.
That is fire. Whoa, that's good.
This might be the drink of the summer.
Okay, I like this one too. I'm rocking with it. Okay.
Try it for yourself. Starbucks Refreshers Concentrates are coming home. Find them in the coffee aisle and make it yours.
Need a laptop that's built to perform and designed to last all day? Select Windows 11 PCs starting at $499.99 are now at Best Buy. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
This is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone. Is the United States going the way of Rome? Every generation imagines that the political maladies confronting its own age are unique. Newspapers proclaim unprecedented crises. Politicians assure the public that the dangers of the moment have never before threatened the survival of liberty. Commentators speak as though history itself began only yesterday. Yet the student of civilization quickly discovers that human nature changes very little, even as governments, technologies, and empires evolve. The names of nations differ, the language spoken in their capitals change, their banners, constitutions, rulers, politicians, they come and go. But beneath those superficial distinctions, however, there persists a remarkable familiar phenomena. Every great civilization eventually creates a permanent governing class more devoted to preserving its own authority and power, as well as their comfort, than fulfilling the purpose for which it was established. So long before Washington, D.C. possessed a swamp, every civilization has already cultivated a swamp of its own. The modern expression, the swamp, has become shorthand for an entrenched political establishment resistant to reform, insulated from accountability, and convinced of its own indispensability. Critics often treat this condition as though it were uniquely American, an affliction born somewhere between the New Deal and the present day. Such a conclusion reflects a profound ignorance of history. That's what we're here to talk about in the Stone Zone. Bureaucracy is among mankind's oldest inventions. Institutions created to serve the people gradually acquire lives and budgets of their own. Offices established to execute laws slowly became influencing the laws themselves. Administrators entrusted with implementing public policy often become persuaded that their own judgment supersedes that of the citizens from whom their legitimate authority originates. This transformation rarely occurs without conspiracy. It emerges through accumulation, habit, institutional inertia, and the timeless temptation to exchange liberty for administrative convenience. What was it that President Ronald Reagan said? The most dangerous words in history? I'm from the government and I'm here to help. The first great civilizations recognized that information itself constituted power. in ancient Egypt depended not merely upon the authority of the pharaoh, but upon the remarkable influence exercised by his scribes. Those educated officials recorded harvests, they assessed taxes, they managed royal storehouses, they supervised construction projects, they maintained census records, and they preserved the governmental memory upon which every subsequent decision depended. Pharaohs came and went, but the machinery of administration endured. Dynasties collapsed beneath invasions or internal conflict, while the bureaucracies, the bureaucratic apparatus, adapted itself to new rulers with astonishing resilience. Governments discovered thousands of years ago that whoever controls the records, the procedures, and the information frequently exercises influence exceeding that of those who occupy the throne. The Persian Empire expanded upon vast territories stretching from the Mediterranean to Central Asia because it mastered administration as skillfully as conquest. Provincial governors, tax collectors, royal inspectors, military administrators, and civil officials enabled the empire to function upon enormous distances. What began as an efficient means of governing an expansive realm gradually produced an increasingly elaborate administrative hierarchy required supervision of its own. Every additional office demanded another office to oversee it, you see. Every new regulation produced another official responsible for interpreting that regulation. Government slowly became occupied with managing itself as much as managing the empire entrusted to its care. The seeds of bureaucratic expansion were planned not through malice, but through success itself. That is precisely what has happened in America. Americans often regard the Roman Empire with a particular admiration because so many of our constitutional principles were inspired by Roman precedents. Rome achieved greatness through discipline, civic virtue, private enterprise, military excellence, and a republican system designed to prevent concentrated authority. Yet, as the Republic transformed into the Roman Empire, administrative complexity expanded alongside territorial conquest. Governors, magistrates, tax officials, legal administrators, financial officers, and imperial clerks multiplied with extraordinary speed. What had once been a republic governed by citizen statesmen increasingly became an empire sustained by professional administrators whose permanence often exceeded that of the emperors themselves. Rome ultimately confronted not only external enemies, but the immense burden of supporting institutions that had grown so large, so expensive, and so detached from the ordinary citizens that they consumed the very vitality they had originally been created to preserve. The Byzantine Empire refined bureaucracy into an astonishing, intricate instrument of governance. Layers of ministers, palace officials, legal scholars, financial administrators, military secretaries, and court functionaries developed procedures so elaborate that even modern historians today struggle to trace their complexity. Emperors frequently discovered that issuing commands differed greatly from ensuring their implementation. Those controlling access, information, documentation, and procedure frequently possessed greater political influence than those wearing the imperial crown. Political power increasingly flowed through offices rather than personalities. Bureaucracy became an institution unto itself, capable of surviving rulers, wars, dynastic disputes, and even national decline. No civilization elevated administration more successfully than Imperial China. For centuries, scholars who have examined the select, rigorous civil service examinations governing one of history's most sophisticated states have concluded this. Their learning, discipline, and continuity contributed significantly to China's longevity. Yet even this remarkable achievement revealed an enduring paradox. Dynasties rose and fell while the bureaucratic class remained largely intact. Emperors might proclaim sweeping reforms, but implementation rested in the hands of permanent bureaucrats and officials whose institutional interests frequently differed with those of the transient rulers. The machinery of government demonstrated once again that permanence possesses its own peculiar form of power. The monarchy of the Bourbon French likewise offers another enduring lesson. During the 18th century, overlapping ministries, tax farmers, provincial administrators, royal councils, and privileged office holders have produced a government increasingly detached from the people it purported to serve. The complexity of administration bred inefficiency, favoritism, and public resentment. Citizens found themselves navigating an incomprehensible labyrinth of regulations, exemptions, fees, taxes, and overlapping jurisdictions. Confidence in government steadily eroded long before the first stones were hurled during the French Revolution. Institutions had become preoccupied with preserving themselves rather than connecting their own excesses or providing the people with bread. The Soviet Union, of course, carried bureaucracy to perhaps its most oppressive modern extreme. While communist ideology promised equality, liberation, and the triumph of the worker, daily existence became governed by an immense administrative class known as the nomenklatura. Employment, education, housing, production, transportation, commerce, and even artistic expression required approval from unelected officials insulated from public accountability. Entire careers depended upon navigating bureaucratic favor rather than demonstrating merit. The state no longer served society. Society increasingly existed to sustain the state. The result was stagnation, corruption, economic decline, and ultimately collapse beneath the crushing weight of institutions incapable of reforming themselves. The framers of the American Constitution, who we celebrate this very week, devoted extraordinary attention to trying to prevent precisely this concentration of permanent government authority. James Madison understood that ambition must counteract ambition. Thomas Jefferson repeatedly warned that liberty survives only where government remains the faithful servant of the people rather than their master. George Washington presided over a federal establishment so modest that its entire civilian workforce could scarcely occupy a single modern office building in Washington, D.C. today. The Constitution established three carefully balanced branches of government precisely because the founders distrusted the concentration of political power regardless of the noble intentions accompanying them. The Founding Fathers were even reticent about having two political parties. America's administrative state did not emerge overnight. Its expansion unfolded gradually across generations. The philosophical foundation appeared during the Progressive Era, when Woodrow Wilson argued that government should increasingly rely upon trained experts operating with substantial independence from ordinary political pressures. The New Deal then dramatically accelerated this transformation by creating agencies entrusted with broad authority to promulgate regulations carrying the practical force of law. Congress increasingly delegated responsibilities once exercised directly by elected legislators. Administrative agencies expanded their jurisdictions across virtually every aspect of American economic and social life. So what had originated as a constitutional republic, emphasizing limited government, slowly evolved into a system in which unelected administrators exercised remarkable influence over industries, businesses, education, energy, agriculture, healthcare, finance, transportations, communications, and virtually every sector. None of this should be interpreted as an indictment of every career public servant, of course. Millions of dedicated Americans enter government service motivated by patriotism, professionalism, and sincere devotion to the public good. Their contributions deserve recognition and gratitude. The danger resides not in individual character, but in institutional incentives. Every bureaucracy naturally seeks larger budgets, broader authority, additional personnel, expanded jurisdiction, and greater permanence. This tendency reflects organizational self-preservation rather than partisan ideology. Businesses pursue profits. Universities seek larger endowments. Labor unions pursue additional membership. Bureaucracies pursue expanded authority. Human nature remains remarkably consistent regardless of institutional setting. History demonstrates with extraordinary consistency that bureaucracies seldom surrender authority voluntarily. Every proposal to consolidate agencies, eliminate obsolete regulations, reduce spending, simplify administrative procedures, or restore authority to elected officials encounters vigorous institutional resistance. Those benefiting from the existing arrangements understandably defend them. Careers, prestige, influence, and organizational identity become intertwined with preserving the status quo. Reformers throughout history have consistently discovered that changing government through elections proves substantially easier than changing governments through administration. This broader historical perspective helps explain the extraordinary resistance encountered by President Donald Trump during both of his administrations. His efforts to reduce the size of the federal bureaucracy, to reassert executive authority over administrative agencies, to eliminate unnecessary regulations, to reorganize departments and challenge long-established institutional practices represents more than ordinary partisan disagreement. Donald Trump is challenging a governing culture whose permanence often transcended electoral outcomes. Whether one supports the president or every one of his policies or not, the larger struggle here reflects a contest repeated throughout recorded history between elected leaders accountable to the voters and the permanent administrative institutions, or what we call the deep state, or the military-industrial complex. Thanks for joining us today in the Stone Zone as we lay out the truth about every great civilization, and we examine the question of whether America is going to go the way of Rome. The central lesson of civilization is not that bureaucracy constitutes an inherent evil. It's that every modern nation requires competent administration. Roads, of course, have to be maintained. Borders must be protected. Laws must be enforced. Can Donald Trump tame the swamp? We shall soon see. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to Stone Zone. Don't go away.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone. This just in. A newly revealed District of Columbia Fire and EMS dispatch call is raising fresh questions about the health of Kentucky Senator and former Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. According to a June 14th call, first responders were sent to the 84-year-old Republican's Washington residence after reports of a possible cardiac arrest, with dispatchers told that CPR was in progress. McConnell's office has declined to comment on the call, although his spokesman said at the time that the senator was receiving excellent hospital care and staying engaged with Senate and Kentucky business through his health scare. Senate Majority Leader John Thune also said that he spoke with McConnell and he remained dialed in. But this latest episode adds to a growing list of public health concerns. McConnell suffered a concussion and a fractured rib in a 2023 fall, later froze twice during public appearances, and experienced additional falls and hospitalizations since then. McConnell has served Kentucky for 7 terms and says his current term will be his last, ending in January of 2027. He called representing the Commonwealth the honor of a lifetime. Now, the Stone Zone does not revel in McConnell's downfall, and it's sad to see his decline, but it does not change his disgraceful decades in Washington, D.C., serving the swamp. McConnell is the poster child of the career politician staying long past their prime. Public office is not a lifetime entitlement, it's a duty. Voters deserve leaders who are vigorous, transparent, and fully capable of fighting for them every single day. McConnell has never come close to living up to that mark. I honestly question whether he's still even with us. He's had no public sightings and no further reports. This is a very, very sad story. Meanwhile, J.D. Vance, the vice president, says the Trump administration is using its memorandum of understanding with Iran to buy time, rebuild leverage, and protect America's interests. Speaking on the Michael Knowles show, Vance said that President Trump wants to use the agreement to help refill global oil supplies and stockpiles, then assess whether Iran is actually living and willing to change its behavior. Vance said that if Tehran makes a real commitment and backs them up with verifiable milestones, the United States could pursue a different relationship. But, he says, if Iran refuses, then nothing has changed, except for America has already banked major wins from recent military campaigns. Knowles summarized Vance's message bluntly. America is replenishing its oil coffers, and Iran has roughly 60 days to behave or face fire and brimstone. This is exactly how peace through strength functions. The Trump administration is not leading with apology, weakness, or wishful thinking. It is telling Iran that there are two paths, verifiable compliance or consequences. America will protect energy markets, support its strategic position, and keep its military options on the table. Iran now understands that its malignant terrorist behavior will no longer be tolerated. No other president had the courage to come after them and take out their leadership like President Trump, so now Iran has one final opportunity to comply or be bombed further back into the Stone Age. The ball is clearly in their court. Meanwhile, the Trump administration announced its withdrawal from the U.S., Mexico, and Canadian trade agreement. The Trump administration simply refusing to rubber stamp another round of North American trade rules without putting American workers first. On Wednesday, U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer said the United States did not agree to renew the USMCA, the trade agreement with Mexico and Canada, at least not in its current form. Greer said the agreement remains in effect for now, but the administration will continue talks with both companies to address what he sees as shortcomings in America's trade deficits. They're still too large, according to President Trump. A senior Trump administration official said the president chose not to rubber stamp renewal without fixing the existing agreements. That's Donald Trump putting America first. Thanks for joining us today in the Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone. Until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
In this 25th anniversary year of September 11th, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation continues to honor America's heroes. Heroes like Fire Lieutenant Michael Wells, who was inspired by 9/11 to serve his community. After 14 dedicated years of service, he lost his battle with occupational cancer, leaving behind his wife, Katie, and their 3 children. Tunnel to Towers honored Lieutenant Wells by paying off the family's mortgage in recognition of his sacrifices. Donate $11 monthly and amplify your impact with a car or land donation. Go to T2T.org.